In today's episode, we're going to talk about something you can actually get excited for: retirement. On this show, usually we talk about topics pertaining to doom and gloom and bankruptcy and loss of money and how you're never going to be able to afford anything again for the rest of your life. That got really dark really fast. But retirement can be a sensitive topic because we gave something up when we walked away from our W-2s to become 1099s. We walked away from a retirement plan. A lot of people who are reaching that age who have never owned their own business may have had this mapped out and planned for them from the beginning and haven't had to worry about it. But that's not the case for the business owner. Now, the good news is identifying the problem is half the solution. As entrepreneurs, that's what we do. We solve problems. But the solution is going to look very, very different for you depending on your business, your role, and what it is that you are responsible for. Some of us are walking around with major assets under our supervision. Some of us have key relationships that are very important to keep the business alive. Some of us can't just go and disappear because of the number of W-2s we have working for us. Do I need to sell my business? Do I need to pass it off to a family member? Do I need to get a succession plan together? Do I just need to close the doors and walk away entirely? We're going to cover all this in this 3-part series with Neil Goldstein going over retirement. Now, this first video breaks things down from a bird's eye view. It helps you get the foundation started to figure out what it needs to start looking like for you as your own business owner, not as some cookie cutter template that you might find on some other guru's channel. In this video, Neil goes into how to set expectations for retirement and how to identify just what it is you want out of that stage of life, how retirement impacts finances, and just what the beginning steps need to look like for someone who hasn't started preparing for retirement. Whether you're a CEO or a solopreneur, this series is for you. If you're new, be sure you subscribe. If you have a question, leave it down in the comments or reach out to us using the links in the show notes below. And with that, let's go to the interview. Neil, welcome to the podcast.
Isaac, a real pleasure to be with you again. What's our topic today?
Today we're talking about retirement, and we're going to talk about it in a series and go through 3 main aspects of it that you've outlined. But starting out, I wanted to take the beginning of the first episode to paint the picture. What is it that is currently going on with baby boomers right now?
Oh, you hit the topic. So many of my clients are in that situation. Essentially, baby boomers are ready to retire. And after many years of owning their business, they have choices. They could sell their business to an independent third party. They could liquidate their business over a period of time, collect the money and shut down. Or they could sell to a family. Those seem to be the 3 major components of what baby boomers are considering at the moment.
Today, we're going to talk more about retirement in general. And it's interesting, you're coming at this from the perspective of what your clients are experiencing and the baby boomers are experiencing. On my end, in research I've done prepping for this, there's a lot of content coming out around what millennials can do as baby boomers retire. So I'm excited to see how you answer some of the questions that I have coming for this series. But one of the stats I saw was that 10,000 baby boomers retire every day as of late 2024, early 2025. How does that statistic hit you, and does it line up with what you see right now?
It certainly does. Right now, there are about 12 million boomer-owned businesses that are up for grabs. Approximately 40% of small business owners are baby boomers. So you can imagine this glut of businesses that are going to be on the market today. So for your generation, you are 100% correct. You're going to have the option of finding the one that you feel most comfortable with, and chances are you could probably buy it for the right price.
And that, I think, is a video we need to make in the future, what that kind of looks like. But today, just focusing on the baby boomers, take me through the conversations that you're having and what you're seeing people facing when it comes to retirement. What is it that they need to do in preparation for that next phase of life?
It is one of the most difficult decisions a business owner has to make. It is not easy to say, okay, I'll retire. I give them a visual picture of an airplane. When an airplane is about to land, it's a gradual descent. A helicopter comes down immediately, straight and vertical, but the airplane takes a long time. Generally, the pilot will say maybe 20 to 30 minutes out, prepare for landing. We should land in about 30 minutes. That's how people should think of retirement. Plan it way ahead. So retirement generally for people I've spoken to and my clients centers around what their activities would be after retirement. They can play golf, they can play pickleball, they can go on vacation, but that doesn't generally fill up their time. There's usually days or weeks or months where they're not working and they're in the house and they have to find something to do. Now, there's a second part to this that when they were in business, they had a full day's mental activity. In retirement, it's almost the opposite. And this is one of the things that people have to get prepared for when thinking about retirement. What mental processes will they do in retirement?
And I wanted to ask a clarifying question because today we're talking more about business owners. Is it different for business owners compared to, say, a W-2 audience member that might be listening today?
Yes, very much so, because a business owner has an asset to sell. They have a business. A W-2 employee has a 401k, a retirement plan, and they will live off their investments and passive income like Social Security. But the business owner has an asset. It's like having a house to sell or being a renter. When it comes time, you can sell the house, but the renter, of course, cannot.
So I like what you're talking about with an airplane landing, and I like what you're talking about with it being an asset to sell. And I want to ask a question that I've seen as a potential issue for someone who's in my spot of the entrepreneurial journey. Very early on, no team, no staff, just solopreneur. Is it possible for a solopreneur to make the transition from a business owner to retiree, or is it different?
Excellent question, because I am in that position. I have a consulting business that I really cannot sell. So in effect, I'm somewhere between a business owner and a W-2. So what I had to do in my career was make sufficient amount of money to put away for my retirement.
There's very little content that I see out there on what it is to actually be the business, to be the person who is behind it. Because like you say, you can't just sell it. You are the product, you are the service, you are what people are coming in for. And maybe you can give some hope to people who are listening, but how is it different for maybe someone who is in that role of, I am the business, but I want to get out, I want to retire? Do you find a way to turn it into an asset, or do you just go all out, I'm done?
You could do both, but what it takes to create the asset from a sole proprietorship is very hard. Because in order for somebody to buy the business from you, they have to know the business that you're in and be prepared to take over your client list. Now, in my practice, clients last somewhere between, say, 2 months and 6 months. That's not really a business that one can sell. But the second part is it all comes down to saving money. See, the benefit of being a sole proprietor is you could probably work out of your house. That means no rent, no extraneous expenses. You control everything about your business and the financial aspects of your business. So I would say you're more likely to succeed by saving money periodically than trying to build it into a business where you have to hire people, maybe take an office, payroll taxes, insurances, etc., and work on saving money. I made the mistake in my career of not saving early. And what I found was if I had to do it all over again, I would save on a weekly basis. I would have a savings account and I would transfer money from my checking to the savings account and forget that that savings account exists. Then I would take the savings account when it matured to an amount that I felt I could invest. and then try and find a vehicle, whether it be the stock market if you're comfortable there. Personally, I'm comfortable with CDs, getting between 4.5% and 5%, which is guaranteed. And that's how I would have done it had I been smarter earlier in my life.
Let's go ahead and rear it back to the person who's ready to sell and maybe has been getting ready. And maybe they haven't, but the business is big enough to where they could sell it and it makes up the difference of the time. What does it take to retire?
Retirement is not just a financial decision, but a financial decision and a mental one. When a business owner tells me they're ready to retire, in most cases, it's because they are in an emotional state. Business owners get into this fatigued situation because they're tired of dealing with customer complaints. They're tired of dealing with employee dissatisfaction, new laws, competition, and they say, I have enough finances that will allow me to retire.
So what is the solution for dealing with the emotional side?
I don't think there is much that a person can do because let's assume that we're talking about a person who's in their 60s or more. And after that many years of fighting the business's problems, it's time to retire. There's not much you can do when you reach that stage. It just is. And it's time.
One of the biggest things that came up for me in our conversation leading up to this interview is the topic of identity. I had a mentor who specialized in working with retirees who wanted to continue working, whether out of aspiration or financial responsibility. They just had to continue working past 65. And she told me the biggest pushback that she got when working with this people was their identity. There was so much tied to either that old business or that old job that walking away from it and starting something new or just not being in that role anymore destroyed them. And emotionally, mentally, it just really messed with their psyche. Is that something that you see as a hurdle, whether in your own experience or the experience of your clients?
Very much so. Let's break this down into different components. Some retire because of health reasons. So let's take that category out and say that the people looking to retire are not doing so because of any health issues. They want to see their grandkids more. They want to travel, read books, play golf. But what they don't recognize is their self-worth. Self-worth is achieved through successes, through validation of being a business owner and having things go your way. It's confirmation that you are a good business person, have been for many years. And the proof is you made money doing it, that people respected you, whether it be vendors, lenders, employees. And the day you retire, that ends. So what happens is a person's self-worth goes from being high to almost non-existent because now they begin to doubt themselves. Did I do the right job? Did I do the right thing by selling? Did I do the right thing by retiring? Nobody calls me anymore. I used to make decisions on a daily basis, and all that goes away. It leaves a void. So I'll give you my personal experience. I bought a business many years ago that was somewhat insolvent. Let's say it was insolvent. And that's what I love to do, turn around businesses. And I turned it around. It was a very difficult fight. There were legal expenses. And then I wound up selling the business. And the day after, I didn't know what to do. I was walking around the living room thinking, well, normally I'm making phone calls, I'm doing deals. All that went away. And the questions that I asked myself were, was I important then? Or was I just deluding myself to thinking I was? And what value do I have now? As silly as it sounds, it had nothing to do with finances because I had plenty of money in the bank and I could do what I want. but I didn't have direction. That is what I meant when I said that an airplane takes time to land, and so should a retirement plan, but mine didn't have that luxury. There were legal battles and other things which prompted me to sell before I had a chance to make a long-term plan.
So what's the solution to that? Because I see two camps that have a lot in common with each other. On one hand, you have the helicopter, like you described for you, walking around the living room. All this energy has to go somewhere. On the other hand, they still want to fill their day with something. There's that passion or that drive to where they don't want to just stop working. What was your solution to that problem?
Well, I think it was about 2 to 3 months off, and I decided that retirement wasn't for me. So I went back into my consulting practice, but it was different this time. Because I didn't need the money, I was able to take on a select group of clients, charge less because, in all honesty, I would have paid them just to allow me to have something to do in the work. But it was wonderful to be rewarded. And the funny part of this is the amount of money that I earned was so significantly less than I was used to, but I appreciated it more. So I went back and I started to work a few days, and it was wonderful. I sort of reclaimed my self-worth, saw my bank account level out, and had a great time working. Met some wonderful people. And again, I was able to help them without the worry of charging them more than they can afford or make them uncomfortable with the amount they were paying.
You mentioned finances a little while ago, and I think this is relevant to someone who maybe finances are a topic of concern for their retirement or maybe not. But what does change financially? What changes about your budget? What changes about what you have to provide for? What does that transition look like, whether you take the helicopter route or the airplane route?
Isaac, I'm glad you're younger, and I'm glad you asked that question because this is going to sound so silly, but those who are in my situation will recognize it as most likely truthful for them, is that you look and you see that you have enough money to do whatever you want, but yet the degradation of the number in the bank account is harmful to the psyche. So at the end of the month, if I look and see that I have less money, it bothers me. Don't ask why. I have sufficient money to do what I want, but just that the number is lower bothers me. And as it gets lower, I start to ask questions. Do I have enough? What happens if my mental capacity goes down? What if my health goes down and I need this money? Is it ever going to be enough? So I would ask people, how much money do you need to retire? And everybody I asked had a different number. Somebody said $500,000, 1 million, 2 million. One person said 5 million. I asked, what are you going to do with 5 million? But that's what they wanted. So understand, for each, it's personal. One person was comfortable at a lower number. One person was comfortable at a high number. So it's very hard to answer what is the correct amount to retire with.
And I feel like we need to put in a disclaimer here that we're also not the source of information for that. You need to find that professional that you trust who can guide you with your situation, and not hold what we say or do as legal or financial advice here at Corporate Bankruptcy A to Z, unless you feel differently about that, Neil.
No, I definitely do, but I do want to comment on this. And I'm going to go into an area which I'm probably in the minority. I'm sure I'm in the minority. I see commercials on TV and I read articles about retirement that say your retirement plan should look like this. Spend 4% of your total estate, total money, each year. I guess the mathematics work. They expect you to live for 25 years in retirement. But I think that is one of the silliest, mathematical equations that I've heard. The only thing that makes sense to me is 25 years times 4 is 100%. I'll give you my view, and I imagine that others might go along with it. Let's say a person is 65 years old. They are in good health. They want to travel. They want to go see the grandkids. So they're going to allot, per this formula, 4%. Let's take a person who's 90. They're not in great health. They don't want to travel. What does the 4% represent? I think each person has to decide what their retirement should be. We talked about it being personal just recently, and I'm a firm believer in being so, because if you're 65 years old, you want to travel, you may have to go for 8% instead of 4%. And so you'll have 2% at 89 and 2% of 90. With respect to those elderly, it probably won't make a difference because they're not traveling as much. They're not spending in fancy restaurants. So for me, I want to use more of my money now, travel, restaurants, see the grandkids, do whatever. And if we come back to what I suggested before, that there is this opportunity for people who sold a business or not to become consultants, to work a part-time job. Take that money, add it to the retirement in the current year, and spend it. My experiences are as follows. I take the Social Security money I get, plus the little work I do to earn money, and that's the money I spend each year on vacations, etc.
I want to ask this question, and this wasn't something that we originally talked about before, but let's say that you are talking to someone or someone is listening to you who is at that point of, I'm in this exact position, I can sell my business, I can do what I want to do in my 60s and 70s and maybe not have to even need as much in my 80s and 90s. What do you tell someone who is having trouble making the jump or biting the bullet of going from business owner to it's time to retire, but they just don't want to?
I volunteer at an organization called Our Daily Bread. This is a shelter in Texas where they feed 700 meals a day and they house the homeless. Wonderful organization. I work in the kitchen and the chef was asking me about my retirement. And after I told her about my plans, she said she's thinking of retiring one day. I said, well, you don't make that decision. She said, what do you mean? I said, the decision is made for you. She said, please explain. I asked her, are you happy with your job now? And she said, yes. So would you retire from a job you're happy with? She said, no. I said, what if you weren't as happy as you are today? She said, I understand your point. Then I would consider retirement.
That's a very good answer.
It's true.
Yeah.
So it is a very hard decision to go from something you do on a routine to some unknown, what am I going to do later? But if you are a person who can, I won't say look into the future, but plan a future and say, okay, I am going to plan a future of all the things we've been discussing in this interview, travel, read books, play golf, do all that, and fill my time up with things that I enjoy, then you are at the beginning of the consideration for retirement.
Is that what it looked like for you? Because earlier you said you went from having a lot to do to having nothing to do. And maybe building, planning, as you put it, a future is the appropriate route to go. But what did your transition look like to where you stopped having days where you didn't have anything to do?
Well, let me go back to talk about my personal experience and why it was a helicopter more than an airplane landing. I was in a situation of buy-sell. Either I was going to buy the business from my partner or he was going to buy it from me. I had brought out my son to take over for me. He's much smarter than I am, and for his whole life I'd been teaching a business. And I thought my retirement would be sitting in the office watching he and my wife run the company. And I was very pleased to sit there and do accounting and bank reconciliations, things I did 50 years ago. And I trusted both, and I thought that would be my retirement. But when it came time that we sold, I was walking the living room thinking, okay, what am I going to do now?
What are some other examples of hard situations? Like, for example, I know that I have a family member who's facing retirement, and it's not that he can't keep working. It's that if he continues to work, they're going to start cutting his pension. He's in a way being aged out or pushed out of the business. And he's not the owner of that business, so that's also a unique situation. But are there any other examples that you have or maybe situations you would address that your clients go through on a regular basis that we haven't talked about yet?
Okay, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Chances are we're talking about somebody who's going to get Social Security. That number is known in advance of retirement. If you take Social Security and your investments, dividend investment, interest income, and others, you arrive at a total amount of cash available to spend. Then, of course, as you would imagine, underneath that number, you put down what the expenses are. So most importantly, you know what your financial position will be. And in the expenses, there should be some categories of entertainment, meals, travel, cars, etc. And then see what that number looks like. If it's positive, then you have a wonderful opportunity to do whatever you want, as opposed to having a negative number, which means money management should be addressed before you retire.
Mm.
And if that number is negative, hey, you may have to work a little, 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week. Again, it'll help you mentally, it'll help your psyche, and you'll have a zero balance at the end of the month between income and expenses. Expenses and income will be equal. For your relative, they're facing something similar. The more they work, the less they'll have in their pension, but will the amount of money earned be more than the deduction made from the loss of the pension? And again, Isaac, it's personal. Sometimes it's better to take the loss because you're working, and that's a very important part of life.
What about, as someone who's bought and sold several businesses, you're in a situation where maybe you're selling to your partner, or maybe you're selling to a third party, whoever it might be, and the magic number after you do the math doesn't add up. They're not coming in high enough, or they're lowballing you, but you're feeling the pressures that you need to let something go and go into your retirement. Do you see that happen very often, where people have to hold out for a better offer?
Isaac, another superior question. It happens all the time. Everybody who sells something thinks it's worth more than the buyer. So in selling a business, generally, a valuation is made so that the buyer and the seller both get a professional to determine how much, say, the business is worth. But the buyer always wants to pay less and the seller always wants more. And they find different philosophies and methodologies to either ask for more or pay less. So what happens is, in my practice, I try and say to my client, you have what they call the bird in the hand. If this deal goes away and you can't get another one, what position are you in? Mm-hmm. Is it better to take a minor hit and get most of the money you want rather than gamble and wait for more? So in essence, I put it as follows. You're waiting for a little bit amount of money more to sell your business. So the upside is known. It's a little. Compared to the downside if you can't sell your business.
Here's another one that I see coming up in headlines and some of the people that I know in circles I run in, but question of ageism. I don't know if this impacts business owners maybe as much as it impacts W-2s who are looking at retirement. But do you see any people being forced out of a situation or maybe forced into retirement as a result of just being at that age?
I see it in many ways. I see it when an owner is selling the business for less money than they need. And this occurs, and we'll get into this in future episodes, but the business has not performed, and the owner either has to sell it for less money or bankruptcy or something which doesn't provide them with money. And they hang on to the business long after it should be disposed of because of ageism, just what you're saying. They feel they could not get a job. Nobody will hire them because of their age. So they hang on to the business too long. That's another answer to your question. When should somebody retire? Again, we'll get into this in future episodes, but there's a recognition about when to sell. And that comes about if the business owner does the right thing and maintains a current valuation of their business. And I say this because let's take an example of a business being worth $4 million year one. Mm-hmm. And the owner's having trouble and they don't want to sell. And the next year it goes to 3.6 million. Well, that's a trend, the beginning of a trend. And the next year it's 3.1. Well, the business owner has to recognize that despite the fact that their business is now worth 3.1 million, the trend is a downward spiral, and they should plan on selling it, moving it quickly, because pretty soon it'll be worth less and less. And then at the end, nobody's going to want to buy that business because, as the expression goes, where do you catch a falling knife? I see this all the time when businesses start to spiral downward. Buyers come in and say, I don't know what to pay. They did 22 million 2 years ago. Then they went to 18 last year. Now they're at 14. Is it going to be 8 next year? I don't know how much to pay, which is why business owners should value their company each year. Just like an employee should update their resume every year. That gives an employee a sense of their value in the marketplace.
So we've gone through a lot of really big questions, and I don't want to dig any further into the selling a business because that's our next video that we'll be talking about next in the series. But going back to retirement, what does retirement look like from day to day? Let's talk about practical application. What does it take to have a comfortable retirement? What advice or insights can you give to listeners?
This is such a hard question, Isaac, because my answer is going to annoy people, and they probably won't do it. But get out a calendar or make up a calendar, Monday through Sunday, and just jot down what you would do on each day. Weekends are easier, families around, people aren't working. But Monday, play golf. Tuesday, go for lunch with friends. Wednesday, play pickleball. Thursday, go bowling. Just write it down because you could label this expectations. That would be the topic of this exercise. What am I expecting from retirement? Am I going to read every afternoon? Am I going to bicycle every afternoon? Just put down in this calendar what your expectations are. And it is a hard thing to do because you will have trouble filling it up. If you can travel and say, I'll do September in Paris, great. If you're buying a second home at a lake and you'll spend time there, great. But again, what are you going to do at the lake? Boating, fishing, hunting, all of this. Just jot it down and see what you come up with.
Do you have anything to say to someone who, like you said, expectations, expects to be able to start over from zero or be able to do a new business when they go into retirement?
I am going to say that the business world for baby boomers has changed so significantly, and I'm guessing they recognize this as well, which probably is causing them to consider retirement. For example, in the old days, you had a banker. Today, you don't have a banker. You have somebody who's transitioning between one bank to another, one office to another. The relationships in business are gone. A baby boomer may have had a relationship with a vendor. That vendor may have sold the business, retired. It's no longer that same relationship. To start a business today requires personal guarantees. No lender is going to give any loan, including the SBA, without a personal guarantee. Does a retiree with, say, a solid financial background want to take a chance that the business might fail and have the rest of their lives haunted by collection agencies, lawyers, the Treasury Department? I'll give you 2 instances of clients in the last 2 years. The government was giving out a lot of money during COVID, and the SBA was just throwing out money. Well, some of my clients took that money and bought a business. The business didn't work out, and now they have personal guarantees to pay back lenders and the SBA. The SBA is tough. You can file what they call an OIC, an offer in compromise, so that you could pay less and make a compromise with them. But who wants to take that risk? You've worked your whole life. Enjoy it. If you feel the need for excitement, find it somewhere else that doesn't include a personal guarantee.
Well, Neil, I appreciate your time and your insights on this topic. I think that there is a lot that we're going to have to talk about in the next 2 sessions with a lot of practical application. But as far as this episode, do you have any final thoughts or parting words of anything that sums up the conversation that we've had?
I do. Number 1, recognize that there will be a change in the mental capacity of life, because where once you may have been the visionary of a company, that's no longer true in retirement. And for me, it was, I worked my whole life and finally got to a stage where I had some self-worth because I thought I was good at what I did. But that again goes away in retirement. And I would urge somebody to consider that if after all of the years working a business or working a job, you have value. Now, finding a place that needs that value, believe it or not, is not hard to do. There's a lot of people of your generation, Isaac, that need people's experiences from my generation. And that is extremely rewarding. Secondly, I do a lot of volunteer work. I never realized how important that would be because in my younger day, I didn't have the time. But I worked at the shelter. I'm working for a different organization. I'm working for the SCORE program and SBA, Service Corps of Retired Executives. Very, very rewarding. Please consider it. Prior to your retirement, check out opportunities to volunteer. And then afterwards, if you have to, force yourself to do it. You will love it.
Excellent. Well, Neil, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. And I'm really looking forward to the next 2 sessions because I'm going to bring in case studies where my clients, and I've had over 115 in my career, we will talk about the mistakes my clients made in selling their business and maybe more importantly, not preparing for a sale of a business. And even more importantly, the decision whether to sell to an independent third party or to bring in family and sell it to them. It is going to be wild, that I could tell you.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm here for it. Let's get into it. We hope you got something out of today's video, and if you have a question for us, you can leave it down in the comments below or by reaching out to us using the links in the show notes. If you're new to the show, be sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a like, a comment, share with a friend, and we will see you next time.